New evidence has surfaced in the Durham investigation that alleges the Clinton campaign took measures to spy on President Trump. This in an effort to create a narrative linking Trump to Russia. At this point, there is still much that has not been released, but to help us get an understanding of where we are now, we have Mark Meckler, who is president of Convention of States. Mark Meckler, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Glad to be with you.
Now, Mark, I want to get your thoughts on the recent findings in the Durham investigation. Allegedly, the Clinton campaign tapped into Trump's servers both at Trump Tower and at the White House and was attempting to make a link between Trump and Russia. Just how big of a deal is this, despite the very little coverage we're seeing from mainstream media?
I think it's an extraordinarily big deal. We've heard for years and years, for decades, this is the next Watergate. This is bigger than Watergate. I think this is way bigger than Watergate. I mean, what you're talking about is a presidential campaign paying money, committing espionage against another presidential campaign, using the government to do so, actually feeding information to the FBI, to the CIA. These are extraordinary revelations, and they also continued to do it after the president became the sitting president of the United States, doing it through the executive office of the president. These are very, very serious allegations, and I hope that if proven true, people go to jail.
Now, Mark, I want to ask you, how were they even able to execute this with such brazenness? Doesn't this raise more questions about the deep state that Trump used to refer to? And what is your interpretation of the deep state? Who are they? How does this apparatus function?
I think it does raise more questions about the deep state. The way they were able to conduct this is there was a third-party contractor that worked for the federal government that had access to these servers and the DNS, the domain name server information, and that's how they were able to get access to this data. And then what you're seeing here is a closed loop, and the deep state really is a closed loop. I think it's broader than just saying bureaucrats or administrative agencies. It is a combination of the Democrat Party, long-term operatives inside the federal government, employees of the federal government, frankly, in every department, but in this case, specifically inside the CIA and the FBI, and then the Democrat media complex. And all of that together makes up a closed loop that allows somebody to go in, get information, feed that information to government agencies, feed it to the media, and creating a closed loop narrative that probably cost President Trump his second term.
Now, Mark, why is the media so mum on this topic, and where do you see this going? Do you think people will go to jail, like you mentioned earlier, and will the media inevitably be forced to report on this?
I think the media is so mum on the topic because, as I described it, they're part of that closed loop. So when you look at the left-wing media complex, the major media outlets, NBC, CBS, ABC, and the like, they're part of the narrative. They hated Trump. They were willing to do anything they could to take down Trump. Before he was elected, during his presidency, and during the re-elect, they went after him hard. And so I don't think they're interested in reporting on it. They're not interested in saying how wrong they were on the Russia collusion narrative. There was indeed collusion. It was to create a false narrative that Trump was somehow in bed with Russia. As far as whether anybody will actually be prosecuted, whether people will go to jail, let's just say my hopes aren't high. I've been involved in the political game since about 2009. I was involved in the Tea Party movement. I saw Lois Lerner targeting folks for the exercise of their First Amendment rights. The Inspector General's report made it very clearly that that's what happened, and nobody paid a price. So I generally don't see public officials at a high level pay a price for these kinds of misdeeds.
Mark Meckler, thank you.
Thank you.